Thank y'all so much for coming. We really appreciate the interest. It's an important topic. I want to start by saying my name is Pam Schmidt. I'm part of the committee that's been reviewing stuff. There's been a lot of stuff. It's been a long time. I think it was supposed to be a 6-month committee, and it's been about a year or so. So a little more maybe. The committee members here today, let me introduce them. Bill Peace, Michelle Talucci, Jim Dixon, Rick Reynolds. And of course, we have our board members up front. So as we get to questions and answers, you'll be able to ask questions, and any of us will answer those questions as the best that we can. So as we get started today, I just want to do a few reminders. One, if you would please silence your cell phones and devices. That will help. Another thing we want to ask is that while we're giving the presentation and while we're doing the questions and answers, please hold your conversations. Whispering becomes very loud, so if you need to make a side conversation, please take it outside if you can. And we ask that you not speak out of turn, so, yelling from the back or something like that. We want to have a nice decorum so that we can be productive. Another thing that we want to say is we do want to give everyone an opportunity to speak, so we're going to kind of control how many questions you have, how much time you have, a couple of questions each person, and then if there's a long line, please go to the back of the line, come back and ask another question. So that will help everybody get there, be able to be heard. And we're hoping that this won't take more than an hour and a half, so that'd be 11:30. But as long as anybody has questions, we're going to want to accommodate you. So we're going to start the meeting today with a presentation by Bill Peace, and then we'll move into the Q&A. So, Bill.
Everybody hear me okay? Back? Good. So let me just ask, yeah. Is that better? Good. Even better for me. So let me just ask, we've done, 3 town halls to date. How many have not attended a town hall? Does anybody didn't hear the previous? Okay. So we were afraid that might be the case. So one of the things that we put into the presentation was a bit of a revisit on what some of the benefits of doing this are. I'm still getting a little bit. And we good? Or are we off now? And we're going to talk about the contract a little bit. And so we'll revisit those two. And you guys have if you haven't seen it already, we have an opportunity to actually see the contract. Last time we spent lots of time on what's in the LOI and what might be in the contract and what if something changed, and we'll kind of go through all of that, okay? All right, let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, all right. So the first question is, why are we doing a revote? And so we'll talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to revisit the benefits of doing this in the first place and what we've been going through, and we've been at this for about 14 months trying to get us across the line. I think the last time we got together, the discussion was we're almost there, and I guess right now we're almost there. So about the same. But we have made a lot of progress, and so I'd encourage you guys to ask questions. This is a very important thing for the ranch. We've certainly seen it that way over the last 14 months as we've kind of dug into the issues all the way from what land are we even talking about? Could anybody possibly get a deed on that land? And all of the garbage comes to mind that went on over the last 50 years as this place got parsed up. We got a real opportunity to try to put it back together, okay? And then we'll talk about the contract, what's in it, answer any questions we've got there, and then what are the next steps to get us from here to that much more across the line. All right, so why are we revoting? So when, as you guys know, the resort timeshare property was sold, Silverleaf put 9.2 acres. There's 2 parcels. They put those into the survey and sold those to Erico. Unfortunately, they were also represented in our Exhibit A, intended to go to us. I'll show you what those are. But because of that, we said very clearly when we talked about the LOI and what if something changed, any material changes, substantive change, that kind of thing, that we would come back and ask you to vote again to make sure that you were voting on reality, what was actually going to happen. And so that's why we're back here, okay? It's because this was considered a material change. Now, out of all of the land, the golf course, all of the, and I'll go over what's included, but out of all of that, 9 acres is, while it's not a lot, it's a change. And we told you that we'd revisit it. So on the benefits, we started out this discussion talking about control. And it's control of what we all enjoy out here, right? When I bought here, I'm on my second house out here. When I bought out here, I actually thought we owned the lakes and the golf course and all of those things. And I know that a lot of people probably didn't read the fine print as I didn't. And so I've said this before, I'd like to fish on a lake that's owned by the association, right? Play golf on a golf course that's owned by the association. But more importantly, control the future going forward on that land. This property here, 4,500 acres or however many it was in the beginning, has been parsed up and given away, and we've all heard lots of stories on this thing. When I came out here, I was very confused once I heard we didn't own the land, and I sat down with Adam and said, "This looks pretty convoluted to me," and I think that it is. And so this is an opportunity to piece that back together. So one of the things that's in the contract is we agreed that if Silverleaf moved this property to us in this transfer, that we would negotiate with the future timeshare owner, in this case now it's Eric Ho, an amenity use agreement. To do that, we need to know what he's going to do with that property. Right? It's a very different agreement if he's going to do condos, or he's going to rip it all down and put houses, or he's going to do something else. And so what we don't want to do is just write an agreement that doesn't apply, right? We already had an agreement with the Holiday Inn guys that didn't bring a lot of money into the ranch for their nightly stays over there on the timeshares. As that business dwindled, it kind of got worse for us. And so we're trying to figure out what that amenity use agreement ought to look like. That's really going to be the next step here. But to be able to negotiate that one-on-one with Eric Ho is going to take us owning this. Right now, Silverleaf's still in the mix. There's 3 of us. You can't negotiate an agreement like that. So we've agreed in good faith to go work on one, but we can't really do that until we own it. We need to own the land. All right, and then the other thing is possible grant eligibility. So were there to be issues with the dam, anything, the state does offer grants for water treatments and dam repairs and things like that. I don't know if we'll get those, but we can't apply for them unless we own it. And Silverleaf never had a motivation to go do that, and we do, right? So that's something that we'll be looking forward to going forward on this. And then, most people in here probably negotiated your taxes with the county, at least protested them. It's hard to do that if you don't own it. So while we pay the taxes, we don't have a lot of leverage in trying to negotiate that. Okay? All right. You guys have seen this map before. So what's in yellow is at a high level, without looking at the parcels, what's included in the common areas. The little red circle that I put on there is where the 9 acres sits. I just wanted to position that. It's on the southwest corner of Greenbrier Dam. No other changes to what property would be conveyed. So it's the common areas and some lots that Silverleaf owned, along with some airport property. All right, so drilling down on that, this is that couple of lots. One of them's 8 acres, one's 1, so it's 9.2 acres. And that's where they're located. It is adjacent to, you can see, Eric Ho's property up here to the top. Up in here is the resort property. And so this was all surveyed in, and that's why what happened. And it kind of is what it is at this point. Okay? All right. So on the contract, I mentioned they're going to convey the common areas to us. It's for consideration of $10. You have to have something in there to make it a valid contract. Essentially, they're just transferring it to us. We will be responsible for closing costs, title insurance, things like that, the fees associated with doing this. Any surveys that we want. To date, we don't know of any, but if there were any, we would have to pay for them. And obviously our own legal fees. We've spent some monies. Adam, you may know what the number is, but we spent some money going into, when we were talking about the LOI, on legal fees to try to work through the LOI and try to work through the beginnings of that contract. We've now finalized that contract, so we spent some more money with lawyers to make sure that all the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted, and that what we agreed, we actually in fact agreed. You know, there was some transition time. You know, we haven't been together for a couple of 3 months, and so there was this almost over the line last time. The time's been spent moving that LOI to a contract, and you know, when that happens, not all the terms necessarily remain the same, and so we've spent the last 60 days reminding everybody that the terms were what they were and it's what we agreed. So now we have a contract that represents what we said before. Specifically, a big one was a special warranty deed. Okay, to make sure that happened. Okay, so we now have a contract. And so we did agree that we'll negotiate this amenity use agreement with Airco, as I explained, and Exhibit A contains the description of the property that's going to be conveyed. And this last one is pretty important in our mind. You know, there was a lot of questions during the LOI that said, well, golly, what if something changed? What if, you know, and it did, and we had to reel them back in, right? But what if the contract changed? We didn't want you to vote once again on a contract you hadn't seen. So out on the website is a contract. It's the final contract, and it is signed by Silverleaf. So if the membership says, let's go, and let's do this deal, then we'll sign that contract. We're not going to spend another 60 days or 6 months on the committee working on that. Okay? All right. Next steps. So this town hall, we wanted to do 2 so that we had them, one on Saturday, one on Tuesday, is pretty normal. So we're going to do another one of these on Tuesday. From a vote standpoint, we have to announce the vote. The vote was announced on the 28th of June. The ballots did, in fact, go out last Wednesday. Ahead of the July 4th holiday. Voting will run through the 25th, and then on the 26th, we will count those ballots and announce to the membership going forward or don't go forward, okay? If it is approved, as I mentioned, the board will sign it, okay? And then we anticipate to get from there through the closing process and get everything documented with the title company, and get to closing will probably take a few weeks, and so we're anticipating that's going to be in August, barring no problems. Okay? And then we can say we got to cross the line. When we can hold up the deed, we got to cross the line. Okay? All right. Now we're going to move to questions.
Okay, who's going to be, well, before we start with the questions, I do want to remind everybody that if you come up with a question after today that you want to get answered, you can go to On the Ranch at hollylakeinfo.com and leave us your question or make a comment if you need to, and those will be routed to us, and we will answer those at the next town hall meeting that we have on Tuesday. So I just wanted to make sure we put that out there. So we're going to start now with questions and Q&As. So who wants to be our first person asking a question? Come on up. I'm going to hold on to the microphone. We're going to ask that you do 1 or 2 questions and then get back in line. If anybody else wants to come and form a line, we'll welcome that as well. Please give us, please give us your name and your section number, perhaps, so we know where you're coming from. That helps us understand sometimes a little bit better what the question might be about.
I am Cheryl Harden, and I'm in Section 5. So often when you're given something for a nominal fee, like $10, then there are income taxes on the difference of the value and the difference that you paid. Are we going to be liable for taxes we're not aware of?
Well,
income taxes, yes. So yes, great question. So we've spent a lot of time with the committee, with the finance committee, and with our auditors, Henry and Peters out of Tyler, And that was a big question we had. So current valuation, when all of this started, was $8.1 million roughly for the property that will be conveyed. So we looked at that and said, well, capital gains taxes. What other taxes are we subject to? Because we don't want to inherit essentially a bunch of property and then for the sum of consideration of $10, and then at the end of this, we owe $750,000 in taxes. So the triad of those folks, along with the board, have reviewed all of this stuff, and Henry and Peters has been working step by step with us in this. So essentially what we're doing is we're looking back, and I'll reflect back to the original agreement with Silverleaf. Our responsibility as an association was to maintain the property. We have done a lot of things that well and exceed what maintenance has been for that property. So we can take those things, whether it be roads, whether it be building buildings, whether it be just a variety of things, and we've systematically went back through and identified those things with the sole purpose and intent of then reducing that initial liability down to something that is also, one, is less taxes, but two, as a nonprofit organization, not-for-profit organization, there are certain percentages that we have to maintain. So to ensure that we maintain those percentages, to reduce our tax liabilities, we've essentially utilized that stuff with the okay from our auditing firm so that we can reduce that initial tax liability down to less than $2 million. Even then, there's going to be a little bit of taxes on it, but it's not going to be substantial. So it's certainly something that we can now claim on our balance sheet. But yes, that's a great question. So we're reducing that, but there is no expectation in the eyes of our auditing firm that we are going to be hit with some kind of huge thing unless we decide to sell it. It's your common areas. We're not going to sell these things. They belong to you. We've worked for 53 years to get a hold of them. Like, we're going to protect these things. The only caveat to that is there are, is it 8 or 10, I think, different individual, no kidding, platted residential lots. It is of no benefit to the association to hold on to those, so certainly we would want to sell those. So there may be a little bit of taxes on those things, but great question. Did that answer it? Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Adam. Our next speaker, come on up. Nope.
Yes, Ray Wilkes, Section 4. I've been hearing rumors, which is it's hard to believe out here. It came to my attention, they brought it to my attention that part of the Eric Ho sale included our speaker. Exactly. His sale included our entrance and the security gate and building. Is that part of it or not? Can we kill that rumor or verify that?
Yeah, so,
Bill, you want to answer?
so the answer is the common areas include the road coming in from 2869 all the way down. What Eric Ho has is an easement on that road to be able to get to his property.
Does that help you?
Does that answer it? Well, the building is ours, is it not? Yeah. Yeah, and it, yeah. Yeah.
So ownership will convey with this. That's the entrance, that's the sign that we finally got to put back up and kind of stake our claim. It's the security building all the way down to the traffic circle and then down to Gulf Drive. It ends roughly about Gulf Drive. Somewhere in that vicinity is his easement agreement. So ownership will rest and reside with Holly Lake Ranch Association. However, there is an easement agreement that allows him access to that property. So ownership, Holly Lake Ranch Association, easement, Eric Ho and his compadres over there.
Great.
Thank you, Adam. Next question. Don't be shy. Come on back. Feel free to form a line. That way we can move along. And the speaker is in the way.
Okay.
Nope, come over here.
Oh, I thought that was in the way. Janine McConnell, sorry, Section 8. I have a residential property, and I also have a lot that we purchased we were going to originally build on. There was, on the wood CAD, a slice in the middle of our lot that was called an easement. And then when this whole thing started with Holiday Inn selling, the appraisal office changed it to, it belonged to Silverleaf. So now, I've been working for 3 years now to try to move that to the side instead of in the middle of my lot, because it's not even needed. And so I've been talking with Adam about that. So it was not yellow on the map that you sent out. So I just need to know, where do I still stand with that? Because it's not a 0 lot. That triangle piece next to it is a 0 lot, but not that. Unless they changed it again, back to a 0, I don't know, because I didn't look again. So it's listed as it belongs to Silverleaf. So what happens to that piece? I'm trying to consolidate my lots.
We're just bringing you up
I'm
here,
good.
Adam.
I'm all good. It sure is good to see you all. Yes, and we have been working on this a lot. So I think the important thing to consider in this is going through and identifying, there could be a little triangle here, or an easement there, or all of these things. So the way that this deal is structured, it's a save and accept type scenario. So there's going to be a ton of different little bits and parcels and pieces that are not captured on that, that are going to convey, because it's a save and accept type scenario. So everything that is legitimately owned by a private individual will be saved and accepted from the transfer of this. So the expectation is all of these little bitty pieces are going to then be transferred over to the association, and then at that point, we can look at it and say, okay, what can we do? But we do have to remember that if it is not defined as an individual lot, it is considered common area. So we have to look at it from that perspective, but I think certainly we're in a better spot to kind of talk through this and all of these things. So yes, hopefully that answered your question.
I'm going to hold the microphone.
Margot Strauss, Section 2. I believe we already pay property taxes on what's being conveyed to us. Will that amount remain essentially the same?
Yes.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
As far as we know, and unless the county does a reappraisal or comes back. In that case, if we own it, we can talk to them and we can negotiate that. But at this point, as far as we know, the taxes we pay today will be the taxes we pay tomorrow. Okay?
Keith Whitmore, Section 4. I'm wondering if we are working on a contingency plan if in fact we can't work a deal with Eric Ho and he goes to individual ownerships of these properties. How do we, number one, do we do a ID check on them at the gate, background, driver's license? How does that work? And then number two, if in fact we don't work a deal, how do we prevent them from traveling the ranch?
Yeah, we are
Bill?
definitely looking at that and very concerned about that. The contract language, you can go look at, says that we will, in good faith, negotiate a contract with Eric Ho. What it doesn't say is we'll negotiate that contract with anybody he sells a timeshare to. So the question is, what's he going to do, and how's that going to affect us? And we're going to have to work that out. We don't have all the answers, right? Yeah, it's a.
Do we have a contingency? Somebody's working on a plan.
Well, I think the best, we're talking about all those different scenarios, because he could do a lot of different things. He could rent, what do you do with rentals? What if he does a VRBO? What if he does you've got guests coming in and out. Maybe they're not owners. Maybe they're part-time renters. Right? There's so many scenarios that could happen. We've spent a lot of time talking about those scenarios. Until he tells us, it's going to be difficult, but I think the best contingency is this ownership of it.
No, I understand
Right,
that
yeah.
fully. I want to make sure we're working on a plan. If he says, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to have renters. Our plan is going to be, do we move gates? Do we have
Yes.
other gates?
The answer is yes. That's what we've talked about. We've talked about putting up other gates to keep him in his area.
Right. Build a border wall if we have to.
And make him pay for it.
Yeah, we'll start that wall and go all the way to El Paso.
I'm Chris Dalton, Section 4. Mark, did we ever decide about the water rights. Who owns the water rights? It could get kind of sticky. Well, for the lake, for the aquifers, pulling water out, you know, if you own the aquifers, and we're pulling water out of the aquifers, they get charges. There might be a lot of money in pulling water out from underneath us. Do we know who owns that water right?
It's in the contract. We would own it, right? Got some, right. So we would have the water rights for the most part, although Liberty has some for what they've got over there. What is that, third of an acre or something that's in that? Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
Yes, so water rights, I think two different ways to look at this. One, it's the water rights for surface area water, and that would be Cattail Lake, Shadow Lake, Whispering Winds, Holly Lake, and then Lake Greenbrier. So currently, Silverleaf has water rights to all of those, so that requires a mandatory reporting requirement through TCEQ every year, but we do have that in there of how to, and you'll see that listed in the purchase and sales agreement. That needs to be transferred over to Holly Lake. While we submit those reports every year, ownership still does reside with them. Now we talk subterranean water and the 5 different plats that Liberty Water has spread out across the ranch. That's a very key point that we need to figure out, to be quite honest. So we know ownership that will be transferred over, but what do those rights really look like? Is there a lease? Is there an easement? Is there a variety of different things on there? So we need to dig into that a little bit more. One, just kind of control for the association. If we reflect back to what's been happening over the course of the last 2 to 3 months with some folks up in Section 4, especially around the Green Meadow area, Green Meadow Trail, yes. I mean, that's a big deal. So if we can have a better leveraging point with public utilities and things like that, why wouldn't we take that? So,
It's leverage that I'm worried about.
and we want that leverage. Yeah.
Good question, Chris. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Laura. I live in Section 2. Hi, guys.
Hi.
I represent the late to the party, have not been involved people, so excuse my questions. But number one, I'm one of those people who voted yes the first time, and I want you to convince me why I shouldn't be concerned about voting yes now that there's 9 acres of lakefront property that wasn't in there before. Is that not? It's on the other side of the road. Other side, okay.
Yep.
That was a quick answer. Number 2, I have looked at the little yellow map. It was very tiny. I voted yes because I trust the work that everybody has put into it. But can you give me a common explanation of what those yellow pieces are? Does it include Holly Hut, the little lake, the big lake, all those little things that we use?
Yeah, so. Yes. We got a password on here, Adam? Yep.
Just give us a second. We'll get that pulled
All
back
this
up.
security going on. I don't think there's any chance of that. Okay. All right, I don't know that I can actually zoom in on this. So, yeah, so the so the answer is that the way the property is described, with a few exceptions like some of the lots that we're picking up from Silverleaf, is it is everything in this box except what is, that's what he was talking about with save and accept. So it's everything but those lots owned by property owners, the members in this room, okay? So the pickleball courts, the golf course, all those things, you know, that today we own some buildings that sit on land we don't own, right? We have a swimming pool that's kind of pretty permanent, you know, in a place we don't own, you know, that kind of thing. And so it really is everything that is not a property owner's lot. right? And so that's where Adam was saying there's going to be little pieces that we have to go figure out. But for the most part, that's the high-level description. I don't know if that answered your question.
The amenities on both sides of the highway, other than
Well,
the other pool activity center and the condos.
yes, the amenities that belong to Erico, right. Okay?
Anybody else?
Woo!
Anyway, I'm Mike Roney, Section 9. My question is about the 9 acres. Obviously, to me, that was an oversight. All the
was.
paperwork going on, we saw it, they didn't see it, and then all of a sudden it pops up. Did we go to Mr. Ho and say, hey, that's ours, we want it back? And what was his reaction?
So,
See, that's
no,
what I don't understand.
What happened was that it was in Exhibit A. It was part of what Holiday Inn was going to convey to us. And then when they did the survey and they did the work on the resort with him, they included those 9 acres. That was caught literally the day before closing. And it was too late to turn that around. There was a conversation subsequent to that with Erico, and he was not willing to say, sure, take it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Can your wife talk now? Yeah, you're right.
Thank you. No. Hi. Denise Johnson, Section 9, the other half. The better half. There's rumors, and we've heard this one from a real good source, that he is selling these units individually. Ho. Because we were even shown a few to buy. My question with that was, what's the dues? You know, his dues plus the Holly Lakes dues. It'd be $150 right now. Second question was, what are you going to do with the pool? Oh, Eric's not planning on doing anything with that pool. And the activity center. So, and the property tax was the biggest. I said, what about what would the property tax be on one of these units? They don't know. So, have you heard about that?
So there's been a lot of talk about, and I know Adam, he can speak to that because he's met with Eric. But there's been talk about what he was going to do with those. He does not have, to our knowledge, a grand plan, I would say. But it is clear they're renovating a few units, right? And there's been talk about he wants to sell those units. I've also heard some talk he wants to rent some units, right? Okay. So on the amenities, so what we agreed, right, was to create an amenity use agreement and charge no more than we would charge for a like situation. So the condos across the street over here, for some of those, might be a like situation, right? So $159 is what they would pay for one of those. But we've got considerations for, is that Unit 1 wants amenity access and Unit 3 doesn't want amenity access, and, how would we ever manage that? How would we get everybody through the gate with that? How would they, so it's a problem. It's an issue, right? It's something that we need to work through with him. If he sold some units, I don't know what he's told those folks related to amenity use. I mean, there is a chance, because he's not obligated to buy amenity use, he could just tell them they don't have it. And we don't know. It's kind of the answer. Which we did, because then you could create a contract that was very specific that said, okay, they're all going to be 130 units, they're all going to pay $159. We talk about initiation fee or whatever it is, and how they're going to get through the gate, and we go from there. We develop something that works for both sides. But not really knowing that is making this difficult.
I think all of us are worried about that.
Yes. I think, our view has been, let's get this under our belt, because then we can sit at the table as the owner of the property and actually negotiate something. Do we do a short-term thing that covers what they're currently doing, and we revisit that if he does something different with some of the buildings? I don't know, right? But before we can do that, we've got to get it in our ownership. But I think that is the next big thing past this, right? is what are we going to do with that so that we can make sure that our property values are held, right? And that this looks, very much like it has always looked. And there's a lot up in the air. We've stepped on the ant mound. They sold a bunch of stuff. So we got to put it back together. But there's probably another 6 months to a year's worth of work just to construct something over there that works for everybody, whether it's a wall or what it is, right?
One thing about him, now, did he tell you directly that he has already sold 4? Yes. Because, now, because it's unlikely that he is going to get through sales of these without setting up some sort of condo association. He's got to be able to handle exterior maintenance. He's got maintenance of the common area. Yes, the property taxes, they're going to have to all be divided up as individual units. He's got a ton of work to do before he can go from, I've got 4 under contract, to these are all sold off. So, yeah.
Well, if the land goes with it, he has to replat, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I can't imagine the land's going to go with it.
Well, I don't know.
Unless it gets sold to a condo
Don't know what he does,
association,
right.
but, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Say again? Man, I don't know him.
Okay, our next question.
Peggy Blair, Section 4. The phrase that concerns me was government subsidized. Can you address that?
No. Well, we don't know what he's going to do with it, right? I've heard those rumors as well. I mean, it's akin to, your neighbor's going to do something. You don't have a lot of control over that. So what we want to do is develop a relationship with this guy and work with him on making sure that, we can coexist in a happy way going forward.
What?
But
That should be done before you sell.
But what we can't control is what he does with his property. You have to remember, that is his property. If
That's
he
right.
wants to sell it, if he wants to rent it out, that is his property. What we can control once we own the common area is how we make a use agreement with him, or if there is a use agreement with him. We are going to meet our LOI obligations, our contract obligations, and work with him. But that doesn't mean we're just going to give it to him and he can do whatever he wants. We will have to make that a part of the negotiation, and it will depend on what he does with the property. Right now, he doesn't have to tell us anything. It's his property.
We have an open border now. We do not know who is going to end up as our neighbors.
we do not. What we do know is that right now they'll have to come through security unless they walk in, right? So we've got at least that level of control. But fair point. We don't know who's going to buy one of those over there and or rent one.
I just want to make
I agree.
an important, what I believe to be a couple of important points. A couple of speakers ago, they had asked about, got to find the sweet spot.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
All right, I'm set. Somebody had mentioned ownership or property, what was it? Membership dues to the association. That is not the case. What he is paying for, if he elects to, is rights to use your amenities. They are not members. That is outside of the ranch's boundaries, so they are non-voting members in this. What's also important to consider is the contract. As they are not part of the association, they are not members, they're neighbors. It is what it is. They're neighbors. But some of the power that we have is the negotiation of the contract. And Bill had mentioned a short-term contract. I think that's the route that we're kind of going down as we look towards some of these things. Let's not do a 5-year or a 3-year or a 10-year or an eternal contract. Let's do a year contract, and let's give him an opportunity to see what he's going to do, and then we revisit that at the 9-month mark before we renew. potentially another contract. So we have some control within that, but you're absolutely right. We don't know who's going to move in there. We don't have any more control over that than you have for your next-door neighbors where you currently reside. But we do have a little bit of protection within that, albeit a little bit, but we will do our best to guide him towards integrating with Holly Lake Ranch and not detracting from it. So.
We have friends from Houston that live here, and they said that Eric Ho was known as a slumlord in Houston.
Is that a question?
No.
Okay, our next speaker.
Oh, well.
If a barrier is ever put up, will they still have access through the east gate? Or is there an alternative? Could they possibly have access from another road?
Yeah, he could certainly choose to put in a road, something that was mentioned to him. He could choose to put in a road coming off 3550 onto that property, right? He could come in, there's another entrance into what was the Holiday Inn admin building, right? It doesn't quite get to everything the same way, but he certainly could choose to do that. At this point, though, he does have an easement and the right to drive on 2869, so we can't keep him from his property. But, you know, if we got to a situation where he didn't want access and want to just cordon that off and maybe a road goes in, but it's too early to tell what he's going to do.
Okay, next question.
Brenda Payne, Section 1. Okay, if we negotiate with them the contract to where they pay dues, yes, and I'm assuming that would be all of them, hopefully. If our dues go up, will their dues go up also? If our dues get to go down, will it go down for them too? And what is the plan to use for that money? I'm assuming it's going to help with the cost that we have right now for that.
So that is part of what would be negotiated, and Adam or Bill might want to speak to that more, but that, of course, will be determined when we make that use agreement. So, but it will certainly be discussed. Adam?
Yes, so the terms of the PSA specifically state similar properties, similar reimbursements. So the expectation would be that if dues go up, theirs commensurately go up, or vice versa if they go down. That goes to reinforce the short-term contract as well. Vice a long-term, where would the money go? It would go back into the general revenue. If we rewind a year ago when Holiday Inn was still up, you would have saw on the balance sheet that there was income from Holiday Inn captured as a revenue. So that would be the same manner that we would do with this, and that would go into the general 0299 operating account, and it would go towards the maintenance of the entirety of Holly Lake Ranch, but it would offset some of those expenses, yes.
Yeah, that was one of the things that, you know, historically with the Holiday Inn folks didn't change, right? So as their visits dwindled, we were still getting the, you know, $1 a week kind of money from it. So we'd fix that.
I gotta find Adam's spot where
Nope,
it's
I'm
better.
good.
Is that good?
Yeah, right here.
Right here? Okay, can I? You're gonna hold it? Okay. All right, first, I gotta turn this way. I wanted to thank you guys. It's not easy doing what you're doing. I wanted to thank you. I got a quick question. It's regarding to public housing, some of the concerns that we've had, some of the rumors that we've had. I've addressed this with Mike Simmons, and basically, if you go back to Section 8 housing, for instance, that you turn it into, I wonder if these things have been addressed. I do know that back in 1998, when they developed the Workforce Investment Act, which oversaw all that there were some restrictions to Section 8 housing that cannot be to the point where it destroys an existing neighborhood, which we are. But I do know that when you own private property, such as Ho does now, that he has a broad leeway in that. But he does have to put his plans to the Commissioner's Court. And I was wondering if that has been addressed. Thank you.
I have talked to Mike Simmons quite a bit about this. Eric, I know, has met with all the precinct commissioners to discuss access off of Lylesville Road. Was it 3550, 3540, whichever one?
3550.
So they have done that. I know that this has come up. It's Section 8 housing. It's low-income housing. A couple of key indicators for that is, one, you also have to have access to public transportation, which, given our location, is very minimal. There also has to be consideration for employment opportunities. There are a variety of other things that go into that. But as far as has he had this specific conversation with Mike Simmons about introducing low-income housing or things of that nature? Not to my knowledge. Mike and I have a very open, I was about to say open relationship, but that probably would have been taken the wrong way. We have goodness, it's Saturday morning, isn't it? Have mercy. We have a very open dialogue. So I would fully anticipate that he would share that. So, but no, he has not mentioned anything specifically about that.
Any other questions?
I guess I'm being chatty today. This is kind of more of a comment. What the town hall is actually about is the transfer of property. I cannot see any negatives to that particular subject. I'm just wondering if anybody else has come up with a negative about it.
Anybody want to comment on that question? She was wanting to know, the particular topic for our town hall today is about the common property transfer, us being able to own our own property. And she doesn't see a negative to that. What she asked is, does anyone else see a negative to us doing that? No. And so the answer, from what I can gather in the audience, is no.
Pass the ballot out.
Do we have? Yes, ma'am, please come up. Give us your name.
Sure. Michelle Raskowitz, Section 8. I guess my question, I apologize because we're weekenders, so if I've missed the answer to this question, the 9 acres that are on the other side of the lake, in this agreement, are we having to purchase them from him, or is he actually going to give them to us?
He's keeping it.
He's keeping it
For-
no matter what.
For now, he's
Okay.
keeping it, yes.
But the goal is for us to get them, correct?
It'd be nice
Okay.
to have.
Okay.
The water today would come across the emergency spillway and across that, so he can't really build on it. So it'd be better if we had it. And that discussion has
No,
gone
but he
on.
that's my
but-
question, is
yeah.
ultimately, if we get it, we're gonna have to purchase it from him.
At this
most
point, that
likely.
is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Then my other question is, they have several amenities there on their property.
Mhm.
So what amenities would they actually need access to that we couldn't gate them off and they come in that entrance on 2869? So they're like their own contained little community. What do they need on our side that they don't already have? Because we're not allowed on that property currently. The golf course, okay.
Golf course,
Okay.
pickleball courts,
Okay.
tennis courts.
So all of that
Yes.
would
So
be.
that's
Holly
would
Lake.
be the amenity use that we would negotiate, that we're talking about.
Right.
And then would we bill him and then he pays us? Or do we build each individual if he sells those off? Is that the next question after we get past this?
That's really the next question, but we can't really see a scenario where we could manage to, we'll do this person, and that person because they want to, and then they change their mind, and I just don't know how we would manage that ever. So our thinking going into this is it needs to be everybody. Our preference would be if he did an association over there, that the association pay that, right? That'd be easier for everybody. But there's too many unknowns to really answer the question, but our preference is to make this as easy as possible and focus on the access and make sure that they're paying for the same access that we pay for.
Okay, thank you. Come on.
I have to say this. Is that the same property Meade wanted to give us?
No,
The spillway
No.
area?
no.
Now, the spillway area comes with maintenance and liabilities. If it is not properly maintained, that water, if it's restricted, it negates the spillway. So that's kind of a liability if we had that. I'd rather have them have that liability. Just my take.
Well, yeah, it is a liability. You can see, I don't know if this is working. No, it's not working. Okay, so above this property, you can see I don't know if you can see the numbers, but 139373 is that 4-acre lot. Let me just walk over here because I don't have my pointer's not working. There's my pointer's Adam. So this is the emergency spillway. And so the water would come across here, were that to ever run across that emergency spillway. And so there's really not much he can do with that land, because this is all, as you guys know, down below the dam is low land, right? So what would you build there, right? And the answer is he's not going to build there, right? It's not of much use, but that's where the water would go. Does that make sense? So this property is owned by Meade, and this is owned by Airco. And homeowner runs that one.
The other consideration on this is his access easement agreement stops about right here. So if he wants to develop this, we don't have to give him access to Holly Trail East. We're not obligated to do that. And the inundation flood maps that you'll see from TCEQ that are contained within our EAP all show that that area is floodable area, that, and it doesn't just run straight across. It comes across here and then it meanders down through this way. So really, this is the only high point that it is within that.
So, I'm sorry, Betty from Section 8. So if he's able to use the road from coming in through the gate, does he have to pay us money for him to be able to use that road? Because we have to pay to keep that road up.
The road from 2869 all the way down to here, no ma'am.
Right.
He gets to utilize that by the terms of the contract and by the access easement agreement.
So he doesn't have to pay anything?
He does not.
No. He'd still come through security unless he puts in another road to get there.
But if we have to pay for the road to get fixed, why wouldn't he have to?
Yeah. Yeah, the easement that was written is he has access, so you're correct.
And that easement is not just, so that's not a new easement either. I think we can trace that all the way back to either 1988 or 1984 was the last time that was increased. And that was when they did an expansion over at the resorts. And they have, I forget, 4 or 5 phases over there. But I think that was tied to phase 4 or phase 5, which was the further down expansion, the eastward expansion down. And then they also created what was the previous archery area, the tennis court area, and things of that nature. So they went through and assigned an access easement agreement at that time, which has then since transferred over and is specifically listed within the purchase and sales agreement. That would be Exhibit E. Page 1 of Exhibit E, they classified Exhibit A, not to be confused with the actual Exhibit A, but Exhibit A to Exhibit E talks about that, but then it's, I know it's,
It is.
it's taken months, and we've read it 1,000 times, so, but it talks about that, and that's a transfer over from there. So this isn't something new, it's a transfer of an existing easement.
Yeah, so it's non-negotiable. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Michelle. So what would entice him to give us that property? Like, what access does he have by keeping that property that would prevent him from ever either turning it over or allowing us to buy it? What does he have access to that if he doesn't have it, he would no longer have access to it and it would be a negative towards him?
Yeah, in fact, he doesn't really, given what Adam just said on the road, he doesn't really have, other than through his property, have access to it. So it wasn't something he was counting on. It was just something they put in the survey. I don't know that there would be a plan to develop it, given all the things that Adam said, right? So what would entice him to sell it, we don't know yet. Maybe there's something in all of these conversations over the next few months that will open our eyes to something like that, but we don't know at this point. Right now, he doesn't want to just give it away because it's his. But maybe we can move past that.
Don't want to over-speculate, because then that's what creates problems and misunderstandings and rumors and distrust. So bottom line is we do have to own it so that we can then have those conversations with Mr. Ho and have more leverage to negotiate with him. Come on up.
Who owns the mineral rights?
I'm not sure. I thought I read in the deed both on what he got and what we would get is those didn't transfer with it. But I don't know the answer. Does anybody know the answer? Do you know the answer, Mark? Okay. He said McKinsey owns it. So, I thought I read in there where the mineral rights were excluded from the transfer on both his, and I looked at what Ho got. Same's true there, right?
Bill McKinsey is one of the original developers.
Original developer.
Yep. And I believe mineral rights are also addressed in the restrictive covenants, dedicatory instruments, however you want to phrase that thing. But from the 1970s, it talks about mineral rights and what you can and can't do. And there are 32, 36 different ones that govern each section and subsection of the ranch. But I believe mineral rights are addressed in there. I can pull it up now if you'd like a definitive answer, but if memory serves correctly, they are addressed in there.
Yeah.
Ileana Sukta, Section 4. Why would we want that piece of property? If it's a flood zone, if it can't be buildable, do we even care for that property?
The reason we've talked about is, as we were talking about the water flow across the emergency spillway and down onto that, we feel like it'd be better to own that as part of the dam and the drainage off of the dam, that kind of thing. That would be why we'd want to own it. But, to do that, we'd still have to have the emergency spillway to have that be all one thing.
Spillway with all the issues that they've said it has.
In the end, probably, yes. Mark? Did you
have a
want to comment? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason we would want the emergency spillway is if we, for instance, wanted to, raise or lower the level of the lake, it matters because that's where it would flow over, right? So you might want to lower that if you're going to lower the lake a little bit, or if you raise it, that kind of thing. That's why that's important. And then the downstream from that is this property. So that's why we'd want to own them both, given the options. Right now, we don't, and we'll see where it goes. Okay.
Any other questions? Guys, it's only 11 o'clock. We got one. Here we go.
Rusty Hernandez. I live in Section 8 with my wife Isabel. So just wanted to say thank you to you all for all your work in doing this. I listened to you talk about exhibit this and that, this and all these things. I work for the city of Grapevine. I'm one of the directors there. So I just want to tell you thank you all for working hard on this project. And we all want to make sure we have people that we like living beside us. Unfortunately, there was somebody that lived in our section that we didn't really want them.
There's always one.
But they've since moved, so, But anyway, again, just tell you thank you, and I appreciate it. My wife and I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank y'all very much. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I'm just going to reinforce. If you come up with something, you think of something tonight, or your neighbor asks you a question that you didn't get an answer to, please email it to ontheranch. Give us the at hollylakeinfo.com.
Right.
And we'll get back with you. One more question. Here we go.
Okay, the pool and the area there where the activity center and all that is, if he's not gonna do anything with that, why wouldn't we want that? Because there's a lot of people that used to use that pool on the east side.
Thank you.
Well, a couple different ways to look at it. I have concerns from a maintenance standpoint. We're increasing our maintenance liability on the ranch. That pool is empty now for the better part of a year. It's went through a winter on top of that, and the heave and the hoe of that thing, the hydraulic pressure of everything pushing up on that. I don't know if you put water in it today, if it would be functional. To be quite honest, we would have to really look at that. And would it be more beneficial from the ranch's perspective to accept a liability like that and pay for it. And it's probably not going to be cheap coming from Eric. But then we're just further marrying ourselves to his stuff on the other side. If we look at it long-term and, it's something we would have to budget for, but maybe it's in the 5 or 10-year plan, and maybe the better answer or another answer is we build another pool. We need a wall.
We need a wall around it.
Razor wire and concertina. Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, it looks
All right.
like we've had all our questions answered, and I guess then we're ready to adjourn. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you, guys.